The crystal towers of Xerion Prime reached toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, 12 different alien species sat around a massive circular table. Each representative looked different from the others. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed with their own light. They had come from across the galaxy for this important meeting. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the room. She was the only human there. Her dark hair was pulled back tight and her brown eyes looked serious. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around her, the alien delegates whispered to each other in their strange languages. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Elena began, her voice clear and strong. Earth brings urgent news. Our deep space sensors have detected something coming toward our galaxy. Something big and dangerous. The holographic display above the table came to life. It showed the dark space between galaxies. Red dots moved slowly but steadily toward their galaxy. The display zoomed in to show energy readings that made no sense. These objects are massive, Elena continued. Each one is larger than our biggest space stations. They move in formation like a fleet. Our scientists think they will reach the outer worlds in 18 months. Admiral Corvex of the Zenthari Empire leaned back in his chair. His reptilian face showed amusement. The Zenthari were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had green scales and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, his voice deep and rumbling. Your species has been traveling in space for what? 50 years? We have been protecting this galaxy for over 10,000 years. The other delegates nodded and made sounds of agreement. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice calm. With respect, Admiral, our sensors are very advanced. We may be new to space travel, but we know how to detect threats. A delegate from the Vegan Confederacy spoke up. The Vegans looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large black eyes. Perhaps Earth should focus on learning proper galactic customs instead of creating panic, she said with a smile that was not friendly. Elena activated another part of her display. This one showed Earth's solar system. Massive construction projects surrounded the planet. New space stations hung in orbit like deadly flowers. The asteroid belt had been changed into something that looked like a maze of weapons. While we have been warning you, we have also been preparing, Elena said. Earth has built new defenses. We have developed weapons that can handle threats from outside our galaxy. We offer to share this technology with all council members. The Aquarian delegate laughed. The Aquarians looked like humans, but with gills on their necks and webbed fingers. Share technology? What could Earth possibly teach civilizations that mastered space travel when your ancestors were still living in caves? More laughter filled the room. Elena looked around at the faces of the delegates. Some looked amused. Others looked bored. None looked worried about her warning. We have faced extinction before, Elena said, her voice growing harder. We know what it looks like. We know how to survive it. When this threat arrives, you will wish you had listened to us. Admiral Corvex stood up. He was nearly 8 feet tall, and his uniform was covered in medals from countless victories. Ambassador, let me explain something to you. The Zenthari fleet alone has over 1 million warships. Our weapons can destroy planets. Our shields can stop anything. What threat could possibly challenge us? The kind of threat that travels between galaxies, Elena replied. The kind that moves in perfect formation. The kind that our sensors show consuming entire star systems as they travel. She changed the display again. This time it showed what their long-range sensors had detected in the path of the approaching objects. Empty space where stars used to be. Void where solar systems had existed for billions of years. These readings must be wrong, said a delegate from the Crystal Collective. The crystal beings looked like living gemstones that changed colors as they spoke. Nothing could consume entire star systems. Our sensors are not wrong, Elena said firmly. Earth has checked these readings hundreds of times. We have sent probe ships to confirm what we detected. These objects are real, they are dangerous, and they are coming here. The room fell quiet for a moment. Then Admiral Corvex spoke again. Even if your readings are correct, which I doubt, the combined fleets of the Galactic Council could handle any threat. We have dealt with space pirates, rogue planets, and stellar disasters. This will be no different. Elena looked directly at him. This is not space pirates or stellar disasters. This is something that has traveled millions of light years to reach us. Something that destroys everything in its path. Something that you have never faced before. And something that Earth thinks it can handle better than civilizations with thousands of years of experience. The Vegan delegate's voice was full of mockery.
How many wars has Earth fought in space?
How many alien invasions have you defeated? None in space, Elena admitted. But on Earth we have survived ice ages that should have killed us. We have survived diseases that wiped out most life on our planet. We have survived wars that nearly destroyed our civilization. Each time we did not just survive. We became stronger. The crystal delegate changed to a darker color. That is all very interesting. But Earth's history of survival does not qualify you to predict galactic threats. Elena felt her patience running out. She had spent months preparing for this meeting. Earth's best scientists had worked day and night to gather evidence. Their military had shared their most secret technologies. And these aliens were treating her like a child who had seen a monster under her bed. "I call for a vote," Admiral Korvex announced. "All in favor of accepting Earth's proposal for joint military preparation and technology sharing." Elena raised her hand. She was the only one. 11 hands stayed down. "Motion denied," Korvex said with satisfaction. "Now can we move on to more important matters? The trade route negotiations with the Outer Rim need our attention." Elena gathered her holographic displays and shut them down. As the other delegates began talking about shipping lanes and cultural exchanges, she walked toward the door. At the exit, she turned back to look at the council one more time. They were already deep in discussion about profit margins and trade agreements. They had completely forgotten about her warning. "When they come," she said quietly to herself, "and they will come, you will remember this day. You will remember that Earth offered to help you survive." She left the crystal tower and walked to her shuttle. As she lifted off from Zarian Prime, she activated her communication system and sent a message back to Earth. "Warning delivered and rejected," she reported. "Recommend we proceed with independent preparations. They will not listen until it is almost too late." Back in the council chamber, the delegates continued their discussions about peaceful matters. None of them noticed that Elena had left with a cold smile on her face. A smile that suggested Earth had expected this response. A smile that suggested they had already begun preparing for what would come next. The galaxy's fate had been decided in that room. Not by the wisdom of the council, but by their pride and their refusal to listen to the newest member of their civilization. In 18 months, they would learn the price of that decision. The first sign of trouble came from the Outer Rim worlds. Kepler Station, a mining colony with 50,000 people, went silent during their regular morning report. The communication officers at Galactic Command tried to reach them for 3 days. Nothing came back except empty space static. Then Arcturus Base stopped transmitting. Then New Geneva Colony. Then the entire Helix sector went dark. One by one, like lights being turned off, the outer worlds disappeared from the Galactic Communication Network. The Galactic Council sent investigation fleets to find out what was happening. The first fleet was small, just 5 scout ships with fast engines and powerful sensors. They jumped to hyperspace and were never heard from again. The second fleet was bigger, 20 warships with full military crews. They reached the edge of the silent zone and managed to send one message back. "Unknown contacts detected. Energy readings are impossible. We are under at..." Then silence. 3 weeks later, the refugees began to arrive. The first ship was barely holding together. Its hull had holes melted through it by some kind of weapon that left the edges smooth like glass. The crew of 12 had been reduced to 3 survivors. They were found floating in spacesuits, their ship's life support completely gone. Commander Sarah Mitchell of the Galactic Patrol brought the survivors aboard her rescue vessel. What they told her made no sense at first. "They came out of nowhere," gasped Captain Torres, a Xanthari officer whose scales had turned white with shock. "Ships the size of moons but alive. Living metal that moved like animals. And the smaller ships, they reproduced themselves during the battle." The second survivor, an Aquarian engineer named Reef Singer, could barely speak. "They didn't destroy our stations," he whispered. "They ate them. Absorbed everything. The metal, the people, the computers. Everything went into their ships." The third survivor said nothing at all. She just stared at the wall and shook constantly. More refugee ships arrived over the following days. Each one brought the same impossible stories. Ships that were alive. Weapons that consumed matter instead of destroying it. Enemies that turned their victims into part of their fleet while keeping them conscious and aware. The stories made no sense, but the evidence was clear. Something was destroying the outer worlds, and it was moving toward the core systems of the galaxy. In the crystal towers of Zerion Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The same delegates who had laughed at Earth's warning now sat in worried silence as Admiral Corvex read the reports. 17 worlds have gone silent, he announced. We have lost contact with over 200 million people. The enemy fleet is approximately 6 months from reaching the core systems. What do we know about them? Asked the Vegan delegate. Her blue skin had turned pale with fear. They call themselves the Devourer Collective, replied Corvex. According to survivor reports, they consume entire worlds. They strip away all organic and technological matter and absorb it into their fleet. The crystal delegate changed to a deep red color. How is that possible? What technology could allow such consumption? We don't know, Corvex admitted. Their ships appear to be biotechnological, living vessels that grow and adapt during battle. Our weapons damage them, but they repair themselves by consuming debris from destroyed ships. The room fell silent as the delegates considered this information. Finally, the Aquarian representative spoke up. What about Earth's warning? They said they detected this threat 18 months ago. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They all remembered dismissing Elena Vasquez and her holographic displays. Earth's sensors were more advanced than we realized, Corvex said quietly. They detected the collective while it was still between galaxies. Should we contact them? Asked the Vegan delegate. Ask for their assistance? Admiral Corvex's yellow eyes flashed with anger. The Zenthari Empire has defended this galaxy for 10,000 years. We do not need help from a species that has been in space for 50 years. He stood up and activated a massive holographic display. It showed the greatest fleet in galactic history. 50,000 warships from 12 different worlds, all gathering at the staging area near the galactic core. The combined fleet is assembling, Corvex announced with pride. Every major military force in the galaxy is contributing ships and crews. We have dreadnoughts that can crack planets. We have fighters that can outrun light itself. We have weapons that can burn away the atmosphere of entire worlds. The display zoomed in to show the flagship of the combined fleet. The Eternal Glory was the largest warship ever built. It was 10 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. I will personally lead this fleet, Corvex continued. We will meet this Devourer Collective at the Kepler Nexus and show them what happens when they threaten civilized worlds. The other delegates began to look more hopeful. The numbers were impressive. 50,000 ships against an enemy that had destroyed only the outer rim colonies. It seemed like enough to handle any threat. Admiral Corvex opened a communication channel to Earth. Elena Vasquez appeared on the screen, but now she wore the uniform of an admiral instead of a diplomat. She looked older and more serious than she had 18 months ago. Admiral Corvex, she said in a neutral tone, I assume you are calling about the Devourer Collective? Indeed, Corvex replied with barely hidden smugness. I wanted to inform you that the Galactic Council is handling the situation. We have assembled the largest military force in galactic history. Perhaps your species would like to observe how a real navy deals with threats. Elena's expression did not change. Good hunting, Admiral. Remember, we offered to help. Help? Corvex laughed. From the species that builds asteroid fortresses? This is a job for professionals, Admiral Vasquez. Consider it educational. Elena's image flickered for a moment. When it cleared, she was smiling, but the smile was cold and did not reach her eyes. We will be watching with great interest, Admiral. Earth wishes you success in your mission. The communication ended, and Corvex turned back to the Council with satisfaction. As you can see, even Earth recognizes that this is beyond their capabilities. They will observe and learn how galactic defense is properly conducted. 3 days later, the combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, 50,000 ships carrying the best crews, the most advanced weapons, and the pride of 12 civilizations. The galaxy watched through quantum-linked cameras aboard the flagships. News broadcasts showed confident military officers explaining how the enemy would be quickly defeated. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the Kepler Nexus, a strategic point where several major space lanes met. It was the perfect place for a decisive battle. The formation was beautiful and terrifying. Dreadnoughts at the center, surrounded by cruisers and destroyers with fighter wings spreading out like deadly wings. For 6 hours they waited. Then the enemy arrived. The Devourer Collective did not emerge from hyperspace like normal ships. They seemed to tear holes in reality itself and step through. The first ship was the size of a small moon, but it was alive. Its hull pulsed with veins of light. Smaller vessels, each one larger than the biggest galactic dreadnought, spread out around it like children. Admiral Corvex, watching from the bridge of eternal glory, felt his confidence waver for the first time. All ships battle formation. Prepare to engage. The battle began with a coordinated attack by the entire galactic fleet, enough firepower to destroy a solar system focused on the lead Devourer ship. The weapons hit their target and seemed to damage it. Parts of the living hull tore away and drifted in space. Then the impossible happened. The damaged sections began to regrow. Not just repair themselves, but become new, smaller ships. Each piece of debris turned into a fighter craft and joined the enemy formation. Impossible, whispered Corvex. No technology can do that. The collective's response was swift and terrifying. Their weapons did not simply destroy. They fired beams of energy that seemed to unravel matter at the molecular level. Ships that were hit did not explode. They dissolved, their atoms joining streams of material that flowed back into the Devourer vessels. The battle raged for 6 hours. The galactic fleet fought bravely and with skill. They destroyed dozens of enemy vessels, but for every ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. And slowly, terrifyingly, their own numbers began to decrease. The quantum-linked cameras began failing one by one. The last clear transmission showed Admiral Corvex on the bridge of eternal glory. His ship was surrounded by Devourer fighters. Something massive was approaching his hull. All ships retreat, he screamed into his communicator. Fall back to the core systems. This is not a battle we can... The transmission cut to static. The quantum link went dead, and across the galaxy, 50,000 points of light on military tracking screens simply disappeared. The greatest fleet in galactic history was gone, not destroyed, not defeated, but absorbed into something that treated advanced civilizations like food. The galaxy was defenseless, and the Devourer collective was still coming. 3 days of silence followed the destruction of the combined fleet. The quantum communication networks that connected the galaxy carried nothing but dead static. Military commanders stared at empty screens where 50,000 ships had once appeared as bright dots of light. Then a single ship limped out of hyperspace. Near the galactic core, the vessel was barely recognizable as a Xanthari scout ship. Its hull was melted in places and covered with strange growths that pulsed with sickly light. The ship's distress beacon was screaming on all emergency frequencies. Rescue teams found 3 survivors in the ship's emergency compartment. 2 Xanthari officers and 1 Aquarian engineer. All 3 were barely alive, and their minds seemed broken by whatever they had witnessed. Dr. Chen, a human medical officer serving with the Galactic Patrol, was part of the team that brought them to the medical station. What she found in their minds would give her nightmares for years to come. The fleet, whispered Lieutenant Crix, one of the Xanthari survivors. His yellow eyes darted around the room like he was looking for enemies. They didn't just destroy it, they harvested it. The Aquarian engineer, Reef Singer, could only speak in broken sentences. Absorbed, still conscious, could hear Admiral Corvex screaming, inside their ship. Still screaming. The 3rd survivor, a Xanthari communications officer named Torax, had not spoken a single word since being rescued. He just sat in the corner of his hospital room and stared at the wall. Dr. Chen reviewed the damaged recordings from the scout ship's computers. What she saw made her hands shake as she operated the controls. The recording showed the final moments of the eternal glory. Admiral Corvex's flagship had been surrounded by Devourer vessels. Instead of destroying the ship with weapons, the enemy had extended long tendrils of living metal. These tendrils had penetrated the hull and begun converting everything inside. The worst part was that the process kept the victims conscious. The recording showed Admiral Corvex being absorbed into the ship's structure, his body changing into something else while his mind remained intact. His screams echoed through the communication system as he became part of the collective. They don't kill, Lieutenant Crix explained to Dr. Chen during one of his rare lucid moments. They incorporate. They add you to their collective consciousness but keep your individual awareness. You become part of them, but you never stop being yourself. You never stop feeling the horror of what you have become. The recordings were shared with military commanders across the galaxy. Panic spread faster than wildfire. Defense fleets that had been moving to reinforce the outer worlds suddenly turned around and retreated to core systems. Trade routes collapsed as merchant ships refused to leave heavily defended ports. On Xerion Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The same crystal chamber that had hosted confident debates about trade and culture now echoed with fear and desperation. "We have lost everything," Admiral Voss announced. He was Admiral Korvex's replacement, a younger Xanthari with less experience but more humility. "Our entire defensive fleet is gone. The Outer Rim is completely consumed. The Collective is moving toward the core worlds, and we have no way to stop them." The Vegan delegate, her blue skin now pale with fear, spoke in a shaking voice. "How long do we have?" "Our analysts estimate 6 weeks," Voss replied. "Maybe less if they accelerate their advance." The crystal representative had turned a dark, frightened purple. "What about evacuation?"
"Can we move our populations to safety?"
"Where?" asked the Aquarian delegate. "They consume everything in their path. There is nowhere to run." The chamber fell silent except for the quiet sounds of alien breathing and the hum of environmental systems. Finally, someone spoke the words that everyone was thinking but no one wanted to say. "What about Earth?" It was the Vegan delegate who said it. The same representative who had mocked Elena Vasquez 18 months earlier. Admiral Voss looked uncomfortable. "Earth's military is small. They have perhaps a few hundred ships at most. What could they do against something that destroyed our combined fleet of 50,000 vessels?" "They warned us," the crystal delegate said quietly, his color shifting to a guilty shade of blue. "They told us this was coming and we laughed at them. They also said they had been preparing," added another delegate. "They claimed to have developed new defenses." The Aquarian representative activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. The image was 18 months old, from Elena's original presentation. It showed the orbital fortresses and modified asteroid belt. "They have been building defenses while we ignored their warnings," she said. "Perhaps they know something we do not." Admiral Voss shook his head. "Even if they have prepared, what could Earth possibly have that our advanced civilizations lack? They are barely 50 years into space travel." "They survived," said a voice from the back of the chamber. It was a new delegate, a replacement for one of the Outer Rim representatives who had died when his world was consumed. Dr. Chen's report mentioned something one of the survivors said. "Earth has survived extinction before, multiple times." The room considered this. Most galactic civilizations had evolved on stable worlds with mild climates and few natural disasters. They had developed technology in peaceful conditions over thousands of years. Earth was different. Earth was a world that had tried to kill its inhabitants repeatedly. "We have no choice," the Vegan delegate finally said. "We must ask for their help. Ask the species we mocked and dismissed." Admiral Voss looked horrified at the idea. "Ask the species that might be our only hope of survival," she replied. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Galactic Council history, all 12 remaining civilizations agreed on something. They would swallow their pride and beg Earth for assistance. The delegation that traveled to Sol was smaller than the one that had originally welcomed Earth to the galactic community. Several of the original representatives had died when their worlds were consumed. Others had been replaced by military leaders as civilian governments collapsed under the pressure of the approaching threat. What they found when they reached the Sol system stopped them cold. Earth's solar system had been transformed into something that looked like a fortress designed by madmen. The orbital stations Elena had shown them 18 months ago were nothing compared to what existed now. Mars had been converted into a massive weapons platform. Its entire surface bristled with railgun installations that could punch holes through moons. The asteroid belt was now a maze of automated gun platforms, each one larger than a battleship. Jupiter's moons had been hollowed out and turned into manufacturing centers that produced ships at an impossible rate. Saturn was surrounded by a ring of energy, collectors that drew power directly from the planet's magnetic field, and Earth itself was protected by a network of defensive satellites that seemed to bend space around them. Admiral Elena Vasquez, now wearing the insignia of Earth's highest military rank, received the delegation aboard Luna Station. The base had grown to the size of a small city, its domes and spires reaching out into space like metallic flowers. The delegation was led by Admiral Voss and included representatives from all surviving civilizations. They approached Elena with the humility of people who knew they were asking for the impossible. "Admiral Vasquez," Admiral Voss began, his proud Xanthari voice now quiet and respectful. "We come to ask for Earth's assistance against the Devourer Collective." Elena studied them with calm brown eyes. She looked older than she had 18 months ago, and her hair now showed streaks of gray, but her gaze was steady and confident. "Help?" she asked. 18 months ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and warned you this was coming. I offered to share Earth's defensive technologies. What was your response? The Vegan delegate stepped forward. We were wrong. We admit that freely. We dismissed your warnings and rejected your offer. Our pride and arrogance have cost millions of lives. Please, added the Aquarian representative, our fleets are gone. Our worlds are defenseless. You are our only hope. Elena walked to a large window that looked out at the transformed solar system. Ships moved between the defensive installations in formations that seemed to dance through three-dimensional space. You called us primitive, she said without turning around. You said we were paranoid. You told us to focus on learning proper galactic customs instead of military preparation. We were fools, Admiral Voss admitted. We had never faced a threat like this. We thought our experience and advanced technology made us superior. We were wrong. Elena turned back to face them. The price of help has already been paid. While you planned trade routes, we prepared for war. While you dismissed our concerns, we built what you are about to witness. She activated a holographic display that showed the approaching Devourer fleet. The enemy had grown larger, incorporating the matter from dozens of consumed worlds. Their ships now numbered in the millions. They will be here in 4 days, Elena said calmly. When they arrive, you will discover why humanity survived when the dinosaurs could not. You will learn why Earth's children are still here after ice ages, plagues, and world wars. The delegates looked at the massive enemy fleet with despair. Even Earth's impressive defenses seemed small compared to the approaching swarm. Can you stop them? Asked the crystal delegate, his color shifting between hope and fear. Elena smiled, and for the first time since they had arrived, the smile reached her eyes. Admiral, you're about to see what happens when a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history surviving extinction decides to go to war. She opened a communication channel to Earth's command center. All stations, this is Luna Base. The collective will be here in 4 days. Begin final preparations for Operation Survival. Yes, ma'am, came the reply. Earth is ready to show the galaxy what we learned from facing extinction. The delegation watched through the windows as Earth's defenses came fully online. The space around the solar system began to shimmer with energy fields that bent light itself. They were about to witness something no civilization in galactic history had ever seen. A species that had turned survival into an art form, preparing to defend not just themselves, but an entire galaxy that had rejected them. The Devourer Collective was coming to consume Earth. What they would find instead was a trap that had been 18 months in the making. The Devourer Collective arrived at the edge of the Sol system exactly when Earth's calculations had predicted. Their fleet had grown massive during the journey through the galaxy. Millions of ships formed a dark cloud that blocked out the stars. At the center were the moon-sized vessels that had consumed entire worlds. The collective's advanced scouts, biomechanical vessels the size of cruisers, approached Earth's outer defenses with confidence. Their previous encounters had taught them to expect desperate resistance, followed by quick absorption. Every civilization they had encountered followed the same pattern. What they found instead was empty space. The asteroid belt that should have been full of defensive platforms appeared vacant. No energy readings, no weapon signatures, no signs of life, just dead rocks floating in the void. Commander Entity 7743, the collective consciousness that controlled the lead scout group, felt something it had not experienced in centuries of consumption, confusion. Where are the defensive installations? It asked through the bio-neural link that connected all Devourer ships. Sensors detect no military presence, replied Scout Entity 2156. The asteroid belt shows only natural mineral formations. The main fleet moved forward, massive bioships sliding through space like living mountains. They had consumed 17 civilizations on their way to this system. Each one had followed the same pattern. First, desperate long-range attacks that did little damage. Then frantic evacuation attempts as their defenses collapsed. Finally, the sweet terror of absorption as billions of consciousness joined the collective. Earth appeared to be different. There were no fleeing evacuation ships, no desperate military formations, no panicked communications flooding the radio spectrum. Perhaps they have already fled, suggested Harvester Entity 4521, whose ship specialized in consuming populated worlds. Impossible, replied the Prime Collective from the flagship. Our long-range sensors detected massive construction in this system. The inhabitants were building something. The lead bioships crossed the orbit of Mars. The planet appeared normal, showing no signs of the military installations that had been detected months earlier. The collective's sensors swept the surface but found only the typical signs of a barely inhabited world. Then Mars opened fire. The planet's entire surface erupted with weapons that had been hidden beneath a holographic shell. Railguns the size of city blocks launched projectiles at near light speed. Energy cannons that drew power from the planet's core fired beams that could cut through moon-sized targets. But these were not ordinary weapons. Earth had spent 18 months studying captured devourer technology. They had learned that the collective's ships could absorb conventional energy and matter. So Earth had built weapons that fired something different. The projectiles that struck the lead bioships did not explode. They phased through normal matter and directly attacked the quantum structure that held the living vessels together. The collective's absorption abilities were useless against weapons that existed partially outside normal space-time. Commander Entity 7743 screamed across the bio-neural network as its ship began to dissolve. Not destroyed, not damaged, but simply ceasing to exist as its quantum foundations were unraveled. Impossible. The Prime Collective roared. No species has weapons that can affect quantum structure. The answer came from Luna Station, where Admiral Elena Vasquez opened a communication channel to the entire collective. Every species you have encountered developed technology in peace. Her voice echoed through their bio-neural network. They built their civilizations assuming the galaxy was safe. We built ours knowing that extinction was always one mistake away. More devourer ships approached the asteroid belt, expecting to find the source of the strange weapons. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by asteroids that suddenly revealed themselves as massive gun platforms. But these were not ordinary weapons platforms. Each one was equipped with null field generators that created zones where biotechnology simply stopped functioning. The collective's living ships entered these fields and became dead metal, unable to repair themselves or reproduce. What is this technology? Demanded Harvester Entity 4521 as its absorption tentacles withered and died. This is what happens when a species spends 50,000 years fighting for survival, Elena replied. We have faced ice ages that lasted millennia. We have survived plagues that killed 90% of our population. We have endured wars that left our planet radioactive. Each time we did not just survive, we learned. The main collective fleet, still numbering in the millions, accelerated toward the inner system. They had lost hundreds of ships to Earth's outer defenses, but they still had overwhelming numbers. No single planet could produce enough exotic weapons to stop them. Then they discovered that they could not leave. The entire Sol system was enclosed in a dimensional cage that Earth had been building for 18 months. It was a modified version of the collective's own biotechnology, reverse-engineered and improved by human scientists, who understood that sometimes the best defense was making sure your enemy could not retreat. You cannot trap the collective. The Prime Entity raged, its moon-sized flagship pulsing with frustrated energy. We have consumed galaxies. We are eternal. You have consumed civilizations that fought you conventionally. Elena's voice remained calm and steady. Today you face a species that turned extinction events into evolutionary advantages. Today you face Earth. The real battle began when the collective fleet reached the orbit of Earth itself. What they found there was not a planet protected by orbital stations. What they found was Earth itself transformed into a weapon. The planet's electromagnetic field had been modified into a consciousness disruptor. As devourer ships approached, their collective intelligence began to fragment. Individual bioships started acting independently, breaking formation as their hive-mind connection failed. Impossible. The Prime Entity screamed. The collective consciousness cannot be severed. Your collective consciousness is based on quantum entanglement across bio-neural networks, Elena explained as if giving a lecture. We spent 6 months learning to disrupt quantum entanglement. We spent another 12 months building a planet-sized disruptor field. Human ships began to emerge from hiding places throughout the solar system. But these were not the crude vessels the collective had expected. Earth's fleet looked like nothing any civilization had ever built. The ships were sleek and predatory, their hulls covered in technology that seemed to bend space around them. They moved through three-dimensional space as if the laws of physics were suggestions rather than requirements. How? The prime entity demanded as human ships danced around its massive flagship, striking with weapons that erased matter from existence. We learned from you, Elena replied. Every piece of collective technology we captured, we studied. Every bioship fragment we recovered, we analyzed. But we did not just copy what you built. We improved it. The human ships were using modified versions of the collective's own biotechnology. But where the Devourer ships consumed matter to grow stronger, the human vessels consumed energy itself. They grew more powerful with each enemy they destroyed. You cannot defeat us, the prime entity roared as more of its ships were erased from reality. We are the collective. We have existed since before your star was born. You have existed by consuming civilizations that had forgotten how to fight for survival. Elena's voice carried the weight of a species that had never forgotten that lesson. You made the mistake of trying to consume a species that learned to turn predators into prey. The battle raged around Earth for 6 hours. The Devourer Collective threw everything it had at the small blue planet. Bioships the size of asteroids fired weapons that could crack continents. Swarms of fighter drones numbering in the billions attacked like living storms. Each attack was absorbed, redirected, or simply negated by defenses that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Earth's defensive network did not just protect against the collective's weapons. It used those weapons as fuel for Earth's own systems. As the battle continued, something impossible began to happen. The Devourer ships were not just being destroyed. They were being edited out of existence. Human weapons did not simply kill the bioships. They removed the ship's ability to have ever existed at all. The collective's hive mind, which had shared the consciousness of trillions of absorbed beings across multiple galaxies, began to experience something new. Fear.
What are you?
The prime entity asked as its flagship began to dissolve under the assault of weapons that attacked the very concept of its existence. Elena Vasquez appeared on every screen throughout the collective's fleet. Her image was transmitted through their own bioneural network, forcing every absorbed consciousness to see and hear her words. We are the species that survived when continents froze solid. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us with ice, fire, disease, and war. We are humans, and extinction is not something that happens to us. Extinction is something we do to threats that endanger our galaxy. The prime entity's flagship, a living mountain that had consumed the matter of entire solar systems, began to break apart. But it was not being destroyed. It was being transformed. Human nanotechnology, based on improved versions of the collective's own bioabsorption systems, was converting the enemy ships into something new. As the last of the Devourer fleet was processed by Earth's defenses, Admiral Vasquez made one final transmission to the galaxy. The Devourer Collective is ended. Not defeated, not destroyed, but edited from history. The galaxy is safe. But understand this. Earth protects what it chooses to protect. Remember that the next time someone offers to help you survive. In the space where the Collective's fleet had been, new stars began to form. Earth had not just defeated the galactic threat. They had learned to create new life from the ashes of their enemies. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had revealed the truth. They were evolution's most successful predators, and they had just claimed the galaxy as their territory. The silence that followed the battle for Sol was more terrifying than the war itself. Across the galaxy, military commanders stared at sensor screens that showed impossible readings. Where the Devourer Collective's massive fleet had existed, there was now only empty space and the strange formation of new stars. On Xerion Prime, the surviving members of the Galactic Council sat in their crystal chamber, watching the aftermath through long-range sensors. The readings made no sense. Matter and energy signatures that should have shown a debris field from the largest space battle in Galactic history instead showed nothing. The entire collective fleet has been eliminated, reported Admiral Voss, his voice barely above a whisper. All sensor readings confirmed total destruction. No survivors, no wreckage, no trace that they ever existed. The Vegan delegate leaned forward in her chair. How is that possible? The collective had millions of ships. Even if Earth won the battle, there should be some evidence of the fight. There is evidence, Voss replied quietly. New star formation in 17 different locations throughout the Sol system. The energy signatures match stellar birth processes, but they are happening far too quickly. Stars that should take millions of years to form are appearing in hours. The crystal representative had turned a pale, frightened white. Are you saying Earth can create stars? Before anyone could answer, every communication screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. Admiral Elena Vasquez appeared on all of them, but she was no longer transmitting from Luna Station. She stood on the bridge of a ship that none of them recognized. The vessel behind her was sleek and predatory, its command center filled with displays that showed star charts of the entire galaxy. But it was not just the ship that had changed. Elena herself looked different. Her hair was now completely silver, and her eyes held a depth that seemed to contain the wisdom of ages. Members of the former Galactic Council, she began, her voice carrying an authority that made admirals and delegates straighten in their chairs. I am broadcasting from the Terran Reckoning, flagship of Earth's new galactic fleet, she gestured, and the holographic display above their table came to life without any input from their control systems. It showed Earth's solar system, but the transformation was complete now. Every planet had been converted into part of a massive defensive network. New ships were emerging from construction facilities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The Devourer Collective has been eliminated, Elena continued. Not defeated in battle, not destroyed by superior weapons, but edited from existence itself. They are gone from history, and new life now grows where their fleet once threatened the galaxy. Admiral Voss found his voice. How? What technology could possibly accomplish such complete destruction? Helena's expression remained calm, but there was steel beneath her words. The technology of a species that learned to survive by turning extinction into evolution. For 18 months we studied every piece of collective biotechnology we could recover. We did not just learn to counter their abilities. We learned to improve upon them. The display changed to show weapon systems that seemed to bend space around themselves, ships that moved through dimensions that normal physics could not describe, defensive installations that drew power from the quantum vacuum itself. While you dismissed our warnings, we were preparing for war, not just against the collective, but against anything else that might threaten the galaxy. We learned that peace is not maintained by hoping threats will go away. Peace is maintained by being prepared to end those threats permanently. The Aquarian delegate spoke up, her voice shaking. What happens now? The collective is gone, but what about the rest of us? What about our worlds, our civilizations? Elena's smile was neither cruel nor kind. It was simply final. The Galactic Council is dissolved. There will be a new order now, with new rules based on survival rather than comfortable assumptions. The holographic display changed again, showing a map of the galaxy with Earth at its center. Lines of influence spread outward like a web, connecting every major star system and trade route. Rule 1, Elena announced. When Earth issues a warning, you listen. The next threat may not give us 18 months to prepare. Rule 2, when Earth offers alliance, you consider it carefully. Our protection comes with responsibilities, but it also comes with benefits. Rule 3, when Earth asks for something, you remember what happened to those who ignored Rules 1 and 2? The crystal delegate's color shifted to a deep, respectful blue. What do you want from us, Admiral? What are these responsibilities you mention? Elena walked closer to the camera, and for a moment the delegates could see beyond her calm exterior to something that had survived ice ages and world wars and the darkest moments of human history. We want you to survive, she said simply. But survival requires more than advanced technology and comfortable civilizations. It requires the wisdom to recognize threats, the courage to face them, and the strength to do what is necessary. The display showed new construction beginning throughout the galaxy. Not weapons platforms or defensive installations, but research facilities, training centers, and communication networks. Earth will establish monitoring stations in every system, not to control you, but to watch for threats you might miss. We will share our defensive technologies, but only with civilizations that prove they can use them responsibly. Admiral Voss leaned forward. And if we refuse these new arrangements? Elena's expression did not change, but the space around the Terran Reckoning seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Admiral, you have seen what happens to those who threaten the galaxy, but you have also seen what happens to those who cooperate with Earth. The choice is yours. The Vegan delegate asked the question that was on everyone's mind. How did you know? 18 months ago, when you warned us about the collective, how could you have been so certain? For the first time since the transmission began, Elena's expression softened slightly, Because we had seen it before. Not the collective specifically, but the pattern. Throughout human history, extinction events have followed the same signs. Changes in the environment that most life forms ignore until it is too late. She gestured to the stars visible through the bridge windows. The galaxy is an environment, just like Earth's climate during the ice ages. When we detected those energy signatures moving between galaxies, we recognized the pattern. Something was coming to change everything, and civilizations that did not adapt would not survive. The display changed one final time, showing automated sensors being deployed throughout the galaxy. Each one was linked to Earth's command network, creating an early warning system that could detect threats from anywhere in the known universe. The age of comfortable assumptions is over, Elena announced. The galaxy now has guardians who understand that survival requires constant vigilance. We learned this lesson from facing extinction repeatedly. Now we share that knowledge with the rest of galactic civilization. Admiral Voss asked the final question. What if another threat arises? Something even worse than the collective? Elena's smile returned, cold and confident. Then the galaxy will face it with the knowledge that extinction is not inevitable. Earth's children have turned survival into an art form. We have learned to create life from death, order from chaos, and strength from adversity. She moved to end the transmission, then paused. One last thing, Admiral. In your reports, make sure you record this accurately. The species you called primitive and paranoid just saved the galaxy. Remember that the next time someone offers to help you survive. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. Outside, automated systems throughout the galaxy were already beginning to implement Earth's new order. Communication networks were being upgraded with quantum encryption that only human technology could break. Trade routes were being monitored by sensors that could detect threats light years away. The transformation was not violent or oppressive. Earth's new systems simply became part of daily life, so integrated and efficient that most people barely noticed them. But military commanders and government leaders understood the message. The galaxy was under new management. 6 months later, the first test of Earth's new order came when long-range sensors detected energy signatures approaching from a different galaxy. Another extinction threat similar to the collective but even larger. The response was swift and coordinated. Every civilization in the galaxy contributed to the defense effort, not because they were forced to, but because they now understood the cost of refusing to take threats seriously. The battle lasted 3 hours. The invading force was not just defeated, but converted into raw materials for new defensive installations. The galaxy did not even notice the war had happened. On Earth, in a quiet office overlooking the transformed landscape of Luna City, Admiral Elena Vasquez made a final entry in her personal log. The galaxy has learned to survive, not through technology alone, but through the wisdom of species that have faced extinction and emerged stronger. We are no longer the newest members of galactic civilization. We are its guardians, its teachers, and its protectors. She paused, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a civilization that understood the true price of peace. Note to self. Sometimes the best way to save a galaxy is to let it ignore your warnings until it needs saving. They listen much better afterward. The age of human hegemony has begun, built not on conquest but on the simple truth that when extinction comes for Earth, extinction loses. The entry was filed in Earth's permanent archives, along with the recordings of the Galactic Council's original dismissal of humanity's warnings. Future generations would study these records to understand how a species dismissed as primitive had become the guardian of an entire galaxy. The lesson was simple. Never underestimate the children of a world that spent 50,000 years teaching its inhabitants that survival requires both preparation and the wisdom to act when others refuse to see the danger approaching. Earth had offered to help save the galaxy. When that offer was rejected, they had prepared to save it anyway. The difference was that now, the galaxy understood who was truly in charge of ensuring its continued existence. The species that had turned extinction into evolution had claimed their rightful place as the shepherds of galactic civilization, and the universe was safer for it.